Hello, everybody. Before we get into the episode today, I just wanted to take a moment to remind you guys about the online virtual mystery school that my friend Paula and I have been secretly working on behind the scenes for a couple of months now. We have just now entered into our soft launch phase in this mystery school that we're calling the Esoteric Academy. You have different libraries and different playlists of all sorts of stuff to help you on your spiritual journey. We have courses over the Bhagavad Gita. We have courses over Ashtanga Yoga, courses over the alchemy of movement, as well as quantum healing courses and meditation courses. I have also meticulously taken all of my education in traditional yoga and created different exercise classes with more of a modern approach. So we're taking stuff like bar, kickboxing, walking classes, and incorporating all of the ancient work as far as engaging Mola Bandha, cleansing the chakras, working through the different vayus of the body, but as I said, in a more modern approach to help you integrate true spirituality and true liberation into your daily life. Of course, because this is a virtual online school, you can do this out of the comfort of your own home. With the monthly tuition, you also get a call with me, a group call with me once a month, as well as one or two live exercise classes a month where I can help you with your body and with your alignment. Now, right now we are in the soft launch phase. So right now our monthly tuition is only $25. That is basically the price of a drop-in class at a yoga studio. So you get all of this. All of this stuff is worth thousands and thousands of dollars, but right now you're getting it for $25 a month. Now, if you purchase the tuition during the soft launch, we will grandfather your price in. So that means when our price goes up to $40 in March of 2025, you will still be at the $25 place if you bought within the soft launch. We're going to honor that for you. During these next 2 months, we want to hear back from you. So during the soft launch period, we can make sure that we are making this mystery school, this virtual platform, as accessible as we can to the general public. For all information for the Esoteric Academy, go down into the description box and follow the link.
Hi everybody, welcome to Empowered Spirit Healing. My name is Paula and today I have two very special guests with me today. I have Bryce from Esoteric Atlanta. How are you today, Bryce?
So excited about this episode. I can't wait.
And I also have Kerri White from who is the creator of Multidimensional Quantum Healing. How are you going today, Kerri?
I'm looking forward to chatting.
Oh, awesome. So I wanted to bring Kerri on today to chat along with me and Bryce, because I've only just met Kerri this year, actually, in 2024, when I completed her level 1 and level 2 multidimensional quantum healing course. And I was just so blown away by Kerri's course. It's just incredible what she covers, and it's all being created by herself. And I just thought it's really unique because I've done quite a few different courses over the years. I've done a lot of learning about self-help, and this one just really stood out to me. So I wanted to get Kerri on and just have a chat to you. And if you can just kind of give us a little bit of a story about your upbringing and how you got into the healing work that you do today.
Thank you, Paula. Yeah, I grew up in Manchester, and a very kind of, I suppose, typical English upbringing or Northern English upbringing, but it was all seen as very weird. So when I was younger, I could always feel energy, I could feel spirits, which I think a lot of us can as kids, and we get told, don't be silly, that's your imagination, it's not real. So I grew up in a family that were just doing what was normal, really, like trying to make a kid go to sleep at night when the kid's petrified because there's something in the room. So I was always very, very sensitive to energies from day one. And then there's even like strong memories of me with one of the dogs that I grew up with, and she had this big lump on her back, and I would stroke her, but I didn't want to touch the lump as a little kid wouldn't, and I used to put my hand over it and then continue stroking her until then I realized, why is there more of a tingle in my hand when I'm not touching her than touching her? And then I remember, asking my mom, why is it tingling in the air above this lump? And the face was, I don't know what you're on about. And I remember folding washing at the time going, what? And I was like, okay, maybe this isn't normal. And then I used to, when my little sister hurt herself, I'd be like, don't tell me where it is, I'll guess. And it was like before the bruise would come up, I would literally be like, oh, it's there. And she'd be like, yeah, that's where it is. So like from a very young age, I suppose I've always been quite in tune with things like that. But growing up in Manchester, it was kind of like you wanted to fit in. I suppose like every kid does, you want to fit in. I kind of kept a lot of it hidden. I remember lots of times in my bedroom feeling like there was something next to me in the room, but then not knowing what to do with it. And then as I got into the teenage years, I just kind of squashed more and more to the background and I had a very I went traveling. I came to Australia. I did the whole backpacker thing. And then I met a guy, and I remember it was when my intuition was like, no, do not stay with this guy. And I was like, I'll be fine. And boom. And then my life started to go very chaotic, because up until that point, I'd always listened to my intuition. And I realized that I'd gone through a fear pathway because I wanted to stay in Australia, and to stay with the guy meant that I could stay in Australia. So then I overrided my intuition because the mind was like, well, this is your ticket to stay. And that's when a lot of things started to go a bit chaotic. So up until that point, even though I'd kept like a lot of my intuition and my guidance that was quite strong, I kept it kind of hidden, because there was even times when I was in South America, and being out and literally going from, as you would back then, just drinking, because I was in my, early 20s, drinking, being really drunk, and then sobering up within a second and being like, we've got to go. And then my friends wouldn't listen to me, and one person did, and we left, and we avoided this whole bar. Apparently there was smash glasses thrown, and it went into chaos. I missed it all, and I've done this a lot during my travels, where I just kind of missed all the chaos. And then when I speak to a friend who didn't follow me out, they would be like, oh, when you left, it all kicked off, or this happened, that happened. So whenever I've listened to my internal guidance, it's beautiful. I miss the chaos, if that makes sense. It's like I miss anything that could happen. But when I haven't followed my internal guidance, that's led to the most detriment events in my life. The guy that I ended up staying with was incredibly jealous. And it ended up being a domestic violence relationship that I ended up being trapped in because of my visa to stay in Australia. And again, when I look back at it all now, there was a lot of learning that had to come through that, where I could see, okay, following my intuition is safe. Not following my intuition is dangerous. It can lead to me being hurt and attacked. So a lot of this had to come in, and it built a lot of self-trust, especially when I managed to just kind of keep my residency when the relationship ended, and then a lot of things started to go good, but there was a lot of stuff that wasn't resolved, and I got into another relationship quite quickly, which was then my ex-husband, but again, unresolved trauma that then quickly went into another relationship. So all this unresolved trauma was building up in the background, and then I ended up I ended up having twins. And then that was like the catalyst for me, for my spiritual, all the mask that I've been hiding behind, it got ripped off. And then everything was like bare. It was like the feeling of ghosts around me was it was so intense and so scary. I remember literally tiptoeing around my home, turning all the lights on, petrified, and I had these little babies to look after. And I could feel like a lot, like, because I had all this unresolved trauma where, I've been in a domestic violence relationship, the body takes score, and all this stuff was stored in me and around me, and I've not dealt with it. I felt fine, but really, was I fine? No. So I didn't actually realize that I was actually holding a lot of trauma within my field. And then I started to get really sick. And I'm looking after my babies and they're not sleeping, and there was things waking them up, things waking me up again, because it was like there was no veil. Like everything was there and it was raw, and I could feel everything in my body started to almost shut down on me. My thyroid stopped working. My moods were horrible. I was literally like, who is this person? And I actually realized at the time that there was actually even like this spirit that was living in my house that kept almost taking over me when I was so really like when I was so sleep deprived. It would come into my body and it would almost take over, because I'd feel when it took over and when it didn't. And I was like, what's wrong with me? But it was because I was so weak.
Yeah.
I was so weak that something could take over me. So this was kind of where I had to kind of snap myself back into health here. I was like, what is going on with me? I was literally holding a baby and my hands were quivering. Then it ended up I slipped a disc in my back. So it just kept going, spirals. And this is kind of what happens once you hit a spiral of kind of depression. Everything goes downhill. And this is why a lot of people can't get out of a depression. And I hit complete. If you think of the dark night of the soul, that was me. And I had 2 babies at the same time, like literally like, how do I got to get out of this hole, because I've got to somehow be a good mother to these children. And that was my catalyst of like, I got to climb myself out no matter what. And it's interesting because my journey on that actually started with, because my background when I was in university was basically all about the body, the nutrition, the exercise, how to maintain a healthy body. So I was like, I've got to go back to my foundation of what I know. And then the more I researched, I started then even doing like parasitic cleanses, because my immune system had gone so low through pregnancy and through being so kind of sick. So I was doing parasite cleanses and I was building up my nutrition, and I started to feel a lot better. But I was still like this gray shell of who I knew I was. And that's when I started to, it was almost like then things just started like coincidences. All of a sudden I just see something about, and again, quantum energy and everything that was around that, around explaining about the energy of life, that would like light me up. And I had to research more and more. And I got a book called The Quantum Touch, and that spoke so much to me. And again, but I spent a lot of time contemplating with that, because as you do, I was literally breastfeeding babies and just trying to get by, but I was just churning over so much like about what's going on with my life. How did I end up here? Why am I here? What have I done to deserve this? And then as I was unpacking it all, it's like a lot of it was my choice. And even when I feel like before the twins, I actually went into what's it called? Life coaching. I did a little workshop on life coaching. And it was funny because I remember it was almost like I had this illusion of I'm fine. And I remember thinking, there's nothing wrong with me. I can't relate to these people who are depressed. And then after that was when I had the twins and everything went rock bottom, really. So it was almost like my soul knew for me to fully be able to empathize, fully be able to understand what is going on. I had to go through it all myself. Yeah. Because I couldn't relate to people. I couldn't relate to them in the despair, in the sorrow, in the depression. I couldn't relate to, parasitic entity attachments until I experienced it all myself. So I spent like a couple of years kind of really processing what is going on with me here. What is in my house? What is this? What is that? And I had even when my young children started to speak and they're pointing out, what's that black spirit in they're like, black spirit. Because I would tell them like about spirits and they're like, there's one. And I didn't want to see. So at the beginning, I didn't want to see any of it. I was too scared. But I could feel it. And that's the thing. I could feel all these things, but I was trying to ignore them. No, it's not real. No, it's not real. And then I'm like, why am I ignoring it? I can't, because of my children. I had to unpack my whole childhood of, you're silly. This isn't real. Why you that just stop believing in ghosts, basically. It was all, I had to unpack all of the programming from my childhood. And then start to relate. Well, the children, they're seeing what I seen as a kid. This is real. And they became then a catalyst for me to fully step into my work, because the things that I would kind of do energetically, the greatest feedback was my children. And I could create things and I'd be like, what color is this? And they'd tell me what color I was creating energetically. And I was like, oh, this is real. And it was like I had to unpack the illusion and all the lies of energy, just because we can't always see it. And again, we can't always see it because, especially as adults, we've programmed ourselves not to see it anymore because we got told it was stupid and it's silly and it's in our imagination. And these innocent children, they haven't been programmed yet to believe that. So they were like, yeah, Mom, it's blue, it's green, this is this is that. And I was like, oh my goodness, all this is real. And so it was like, and then I knew, okay, this is why I had to go through it with my children, even though it was like probably the most hardest time in my entire life. And it's interesting because it actually goes with that transit of Pluto. You know, we had that really heavy transit. Literally, it was from when I left the UK, and it's only just ended really, you know, in the last couple of months. But that transit has been the most biggest learning curve in my entire existence so far. So it's going to be interesting to see, because I feel like I passed the test, if it was a test.
Yeah.
Because it was very, very hard.
Pluto was sassy. Pluto was very sassy.
So I literally felt like I got dragged through a hedge backwards over those years. And I had to keep coming out, pulling out the forms. Okay, how did that happen? What happened? And this is how I came actually really good at what I do now. But it wasn't an intention to teach. It wasn't an intention to even help anyone else. All I wanted to do was save myself, basically, so I could be a good mom. And I feel like, I don't know whether that was then a good foundation then, because my intention was never even to make money or do anything with what I was learning. It was like, how can I get myself back to health? And this is what led me, I did a lot of different workshops as well. And again, some workshops I gained like, you know, oh, this makes sense, this makes sense. And then other things I'd be like, why doesn't that resonate? And then I remember even certain teachers, the way they taught me, I felt like I was little. And I was like, oh, I feel belittled. I'm looking up to this teacher, but that doesn't feel right. So then that came a foundation of, when I teach, I didn't think I was going to teach, but then it did become a foundation of, we're all equal. Like, I just because someone knows a little bit more information, or, you know, like they've managed to access that doesn't mean they're any less than me. Like, we're all on the same page. Like, no one is better than me and no one is below me. And I came to that understanding through spiritual teachers. And I feel like in the spiritual community, there is a lot of those that I'm the guru, listen to me, I know better than you. But again, we can all
ego, isn't there?
Yeah, there's a lot of ego in there.
I say with that, I always say a teacher's job is to eventually not be needed.
Exactly.
A cult leader's job is to always be needed.
Yeah.
In the law of one, they talk about like the negative polarity, there is a pecking order. But in the positive polarity, everybody is equal. And so where you might have more education in one field, somebody else has more education in another field, and you work together to teach each other with the, you know, and that's the huge difference. And I warn my students all the time. I'm like, look, a teacher's job is to eventually not be needed. My job is to give you the autonomy to understand this stuff yourself, because you're the one that has to, I can just give you the template. You're the one that has to actually do the work. But can we, I want to pause on something that I think you said that was such a mic drop. And I think I want to go back. You said, and I'm paraphrasing what you said, that you thought you were okay. You didn't realize that you had depression. And I think that is such a ding, 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 ding moment, because I think there are so many people, especially in our age group. You know, I'm a millennial. I think I'm an elder millennial, but I cusped Gen X and the millennial. But we're in this weird, you know, even just in general, our generation, we came as kids where there wasn't a lot of technology, and then all of a sudden, boom, there was this technology. And so we kind of had to evolve in a very stressful way to this new reality. And I think a lot of people think they're okay, but that's the beautiful thing about the human spirit, is how resilient we are. Like, that's actually one of the most amazing things, in my opinion, about the human mind, is that it can almost trick you into thinking you're fine to keep you alive.
Yeah.
And I think so, and that is and I don't want to I think that's a beautiful thing that as humans that our minds can actually do that for us, to keep us in survival, to keep us. But the problem is, a lot of us are still running in survival mode, and our cortisol levels are jacked up when they shouldn't be.
Yeah.
I think you hit on a really, and I see this a lot in my line of work too, and what you hit on, like when a student comes in, they think they're fine and they just want to do some stuff and do the light and love stuff. But then all of a sudden, when you start the work, that very thin barrier breaks, and that depression shows itself. And I think that story you just told was so beautiful, because if one of our awesome listeners hears that, and that you've that experience, that you're not crazy, you're not alone. This happens to a lot of people, and sometimes having that dark night of the soul, allowing that to come up is you actually presenting it to the light. And as much as because it sucks, it's horrible.
And you've got to process everything that you were like, nah, I'm not going to deal with that. I'm okay. And that's what I think a lot of us do. It's like, we don't deal with it. We're just like, that's happened now. I'll just, I'll close the closet door.
Yeah.
And it's all these closet doors that get shut. And then eventually we get all this weight on us. And then that's where the sickness comes from, because we can only carry so much trauma before our bodies start to get some kind of health condition. And every health condition basically is an accumulation of unprocessed trauma. And it's going to come out in any way. You know what I mean? It's going to, whether it comes out as your thyroid, like mine, whether it comes out as, arthritis, other kind of conditions, diabetes, all these different things. Your body is trying to communicate to you that I'm at capacity. Are you going to process this stuff? Because I'm holding on to a lot of stuff here. And that's kind of what the body's saying when it starts to become sick. It has to show you physically, because you're just going to carry on otherwise. And there's only so much we can carry. And that's what I must find, every single session I do, most people are literally like, oh, I'm so much lighter. I'm like, yeah, energetic baggage is gone.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just, sorry, I was just going to say, I also love how you said that actually going through that and experiencing that yourself has helped you to emphasize so much more with people that you work with. And, I could relate so much to your story, because while I didn't have twins, my two older girls are about 18 months apart. So they were kind of almost like twins. It was pretty intense at the time. And I went through my own dark night of the soul when they were very little. And, there was a lot of mum guilt there for a while, because I was very, very depressed. I had pretty much chronic fatigue. I had no energy. I really struggled just to get through the day. And, I always felt like a bad mum, but they are such beautiful, sensitive children now. They are so understanding. And I also believe that if I hadn't gone through this myself, I wouldn't be able to help people in the same way, because I've actually experienced it. And when people, say to me, oh, depression is just all in your head, and it's like, mate, you have not experienced depression if you say it's all in your head, because it's just. And
I used to think the same thing. I used to think, what? Snap out of it. Just snap
out of it.
Get out of that.
In the South, we say cowgirl up, just cowgirl up, just dust.
Yeah, right.
With the mom thing too, and I'm not a parent, but I think Paula, because we have a lot of women out here, and I think motherhood is one of the most honorable jobs any human being can do, and it makes me emotional, because you literally don't have downtime when you have a child. And as an aunt, I feel like I would do anything for my nephews and my nieces, but I'll say, my sister, Paula, you sent my sister some beautiful stuff. All 4 of her kids, none of them were planned. And she married an Italian Catholic. That's what I say. That's what she gets. Marrying an Italian Catholic. But
go an Italian family.
She has her two oldest ones that are very a year and a half apart, and then her younger ones. There's kind of an age gap between them. And I was over at her house, and she's very fortunate. She doesn't have to work. She's a mom, but having 4 kids, 2 that are coming into their teenage years and 2 babies, and with the youngest one, it's a lot of work. And with the youngest one, Matthew, I was at her house, and she was trying to get 3-year-olds such situated. The other 2 are like, Mom, I need this. Mom, I need this. Matthew's crying. She's got to get him to the car, get him to the doctor. And she had this moment where she just started crying herself. And she's like, no, I'm fine. no, I'm fine. I get to do this again. I get to do this again. And I want to be like, no, Rebecca, you're not like, you're one person. You are breastfeeding. You've got a 3-year-old who is having an emotional breakdown because she's not the baby anymore. So you're having to mother her in that way because she's not mommy's baby anymore because there's another baby. You've got these older 2 kids who are in a very pivotal time in their life that need to go to soccer practice and cheer and gymnastics, and you're the taxi. Like, you don't have to trick your mind into toxic positivity. Like, no, I'm lucky because I get to do this again. No, you're not fine. Like, this is I think for moms, like, to take that moment and be like, I need help. Yep. This is tough. And these 4 humans, I mean, they love their dad. My brother-in-law is great too, but my sister literally feeds one of them with her body and feeds the rest of them with her hands. So, like, when they skin their knees, who are they calling for? They're not calling for dad. They're calling for mom. When the child's throwing up in the middle of the night because they got a stomach virus, who's the person sitting in the bathroom with them with the cold rag over their head? Mom. Who's the person that carried them in their body for 9 months and went through an agonizing birth to give them life? Mom. And so I think that's really important that you guys speak about that. I think I always say I was my parents' first Saturn return because I was born in their late 20s. Like, I think that every time you have a child, it's amazing, but it's also, that is a lesson from the universe that
and they trigger you. They trigger you in the most perfect ways. They just know exactly what's going to make you boil. Look, I'm not gonna lie. I cried today. I got overwhelmed today. I went out into the backyard. I was feeding the chickens. I was gonna say chooks and then chicks, and that all came out. That I'm babysitting at the moment. And I just was like, you know what? Sometimes life is just too much. It's just gets so overwhelming. But you know what? You've just got to, I think I let it out in a healthy way. Just had a little cry, and I'm like, you know what? I can do this. I can get through this. It's okay. I think trying to tell yourself that it's not okay to cry and that you're okay when you're not okay it doesn't help, because you're just suppressing it and pushing it down. And then, like you say, Kerri, it just comes back out as sickness.
Yeah. Kind of what I had to learn. It's like to unpack all that was in the closets.
Yeah.
And I think
so where did you go from there, Kerri? So where did you go from? So you were really quite sick and you had these 2 beautiful tiny little babies that just needed you so badly, and you just kept questioning and trying to find answers. And so how did you go from there?
Yeah, I suppose I just kept unpacking. It was like that contemplation of, okay, where is this coming from? And then I started getting memories. Okay, as soon as I started asking the questions, it was like I was getting the memories, and I could feel stuff that I did and the decisions I'd made. I'm like, part of me has chose a lot of this. I got myself in this situation. And again, you can feel into depression from that. But then I started to get empowered from that. If I chose the mess, if I've somehow created all this from my conditioning, from my upbringing, from me denying myself, then I can start creating something new. I can start creating my way out of this. And this is why a lot of the way I process with people, I say, like, when I'm doing sessions with someone, I'm just allowing them to see their own selves and allowing them to connect with their own awareness, because a lot of times we can't see what's right in front of our faces. And as soon as someone starts to say, oh, what's this with your dad? And then they're like, ooh, and then they'll have an epiphany. They'll have an awareness that will come through, and they'll get a memory. And sometimes they'll just burst into tears. And you just know that already that cupboard door got swung right open, and now that stuff's starting to get processed. I just say to a lot of people as well, it's expired. It's time that you clean it out. It's out of date and it's messy in there.
Yeah. And
if you don't look at it, it's stale. It's got them cans are going to explode one day.
Moldy.
Get them out.
Yeah. I also too, with the paranormal stuff, I think that there is an unacknowledged, for people who are sensitive to the paranormal, I think there is an unacknowledged trauma, PTSD, that happens from that as well. Because it's different from you, Kerri, like down here in the South, I know Paula and I spoke about this. It's very common for things to be haunted down here in the South. It's part of our culture. but it's still, so even though I was very sensitive to spirits too, I know exactly, wake up with scratches and bruises. I know exactly what you're talking about. And my parents believed me and we talked about it. I'd go to a friend's, I mean, it's hysterical. You go to a friend's house whose house is haunted and the mom will be like, now, Miss Janine, you need to be quiet, and talking to the ghost, you know, like it's just, you know, I mean, I think I've said it before in the opening of The Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil, which takes place is a true story. It takes place in Savannah, Georgia. They talk about the guy that walks the ghost dog. And when the movie and the book got big, they were talking about that on a big national news show once about how weird that is. And I remember watching it as a teenager and being like, wait,
Like, that's not weird.
you guys don't walk your ghost dogs? Like, you guys don't do that? Like, that's just like Mr. Bill down the street. Like, that's like normal stuff. So even though it was different from you, where it was acknowledged that, yeah, absolutely things are haunted. And, you know, my mother told me my first ghost story, and then we went to church on Sunday. So like, you kind of have both those worlds, you know, of no, you die and go to heaven, but no, actually you can be a ghost too. But there's still trauma with that. Like there's still, when you don't feel like, because I was the one, kind of like you, Kerri, I was the one that the ghost or the entities would actually physically communicate with. And when you don't have that control, when you feel like there is something happening to you and you don't know how to put a boundary up and no one really knows how to help you with that.
Scary. Yeah.
And it can cause so much trauma. And so sometimes I think what happens is you do disassociate from it.
And it's a coping mechanism. You just pretend it's not there. It's not happening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even though your hair is getting pulled and your friends are looking, you're like, no, it's fine. It's just staticky. It's fine. You know? So, yeah. So regardless of
and
whether
this is another thing I had to learn as well. I had to learn how to actually remove ghosts. So I actually become one of my really, like, I suppose what a lot of people come to see me for now is entity removal. And again, we get these attachments. Again, the weaker we are, and I say to people as well, they can only see within you that isn't processed. So they can only see the darkness. So if you've got areas that are sad and unprocessed, that is what a lower entity will attach to, something that is at the same frequency as it is at. Once you process all your stuff, you actually become like almost invisible to the lower field. It can't see you anymore. So then you get less attachments and less interference. So that it's almost like it's quite empowering then to know that, okay, anything that is attached to me, what actually, I start using them now as like help. If it's attached to me, what actually is it attached to? And I follow and travel through the line. And sometimes it can then go even deeper, like into past lives. It can go down your genetic line. It can go to something that happened to you as a kid, something that happened to you last week, something that you're feeling in that day. Like it literally could go anywhere. And again, because there's really no time. And again, that gets into another kind of story. But it will point to you because it will attach to that needs to be resolved. And I find that so when people come to me with like, I've removed this attachment, I don't just remove the attachment. I follow the line of where it's attached to. And then once that's processed and that's resolved, nothing will attach to that again because it's not there. Right. And when people are like, oh, will attachment come back? And I'm like, it will only come back to something else that is not what we've just processed.
So you can feed off, it's feeding it, right? There's no if you want to starve something, if you get rid of something, you starve it out. And that's so interesting, Kerri. My friend Cindy, who's also going to be, she does attachment removal as well, and she talks about too sometimes, even if we're talking about like, I love your opinion on this. So we have like spirits that we have what we call disembodied spirits, which are like ghosts. And then we have other types of spirits too. And she said sometimes what happens, and I'm paraphrasing how she says this, is that you might have a disembodied spirit, so a ghost, someone that was at one point human, that recognizes a weakness in you that they shared as a human being as well. And they come to you almost to try to like comfort you, but it becomes a heavy weight that you carry because they themselves are not fully understanding that their power and their energy is different now that they're disembodied, if that makes sense. And so it is, and in India, they talk about like the word demon is short for demonstrator. Well, what's a demonstrator? It's a teacher. And when you see it that way, it loses its power a little bit, that it's just showing you something that you need to acknowledge in order to move through that karma and transcend.
Yeah, because I even say, I was like, the really evil, what is it? It's just backwards. It's just everything that is distorted. I even say almost like, if you're playing a musical instrument, you wouldn't say it was broken if the strings weren't, tightened to be in the right tune. So in a way, a lot of these things have just become distorted. They're not playing the what we could say is the correct tune, the correct vibration. And this is when I look at like the wholeness of everything. Like even when we go into stuff that is negative, is it really negative, or is it something that has become distorted and out of tune? Because really all that there is creation. And creation be in alignment. And when we see those beautiful symmetrical vibrations, they're beautiful, aren't they? Like, all those symmetrical shapes, when you look at a rose, when you look at flowers. Symmetry is that vibration is in full harmony. And when a lot of these things look quite distorted or disfigured. And again, that's pointing out that their frequency is out of alignment with creation. It's become distorted from the whole, from the oneness. It's become separated from what we truly are. So again, a lot of these times when I'm liberating these dark entities that are causing so much trauma, they're actually just need rescuing in a way. They need bringing back into harmony creation. So a lot of the time, the entity removal is, how can we harmonize this entity so it's actually not even, it's no longer becoming a parasitic on people. It actually comes back in alignment with creation and becomes even a helper at some point. So yeah, there's so many different angles of strangeness around that when I was, learning that, okay, these things aren't out to get me.
No.
They're attaching to stuff in me, and actually they're only attaching to that because that's the only thing they understand. And then it's like you can almost feel sorry for me. Yeah, they can relate to sadness, so they attach to that in me. Oh, well, that's, or they can relate to anger and they attach to that inside of me. But what kind of existence do they have if that's the only frequency they can relate to and feed off? So it's actually like we're actually doing a really good service in liberating these, disincarnate spirits and some spirits that are actually created through negative thought forms as well. We can, classes. Big entity.
Wasn't that wild? I tell it to you all the time. That's like poltergeist. Like it is a little entity that it wasn't ever a disembodied spirit. You've literally created this entity, but that's how powerful your own emotions are. Is that you can create a kinetic spirit that then becomes its own sentient being through. At that point, you're like the mother of darkness, right? You're just like birthing these
well, we are creation, aren't we? But what are we creating? A lot of us, we're not consciously creating stuff. And then again, this is the same with our lives. We create a lot of mess for ourselves because we're not realizing that our thoughts and our beliefs are actually creating our reality and how we perceive ourselves. Like when we're doing everything for everyone else and not doing anything for ourselves, and then we're wondering why we're miserable, we're depressed because we're, it's even that where they put the rice that is ignored just goes just as black as the rice that has, I hate you. Have you seen that experiment where it's like, I love you, I ignore that one, and then I hate that one. So it's like when we ignore our needs, we ignore our when we have children, we do this a lot. They come first. They can have all the good food. I'll just eat this tin of beans or whatever. We're ignoring ourselves. No wonder why we become dark. No wonder why we become depressed. And we give all our light to our children. But then we don't realize that actually they need us to be in our power and to recognize ourselves. And yeah, that's what creates a lot of depression as well, because I find that a lot of people that give a lot to others, that do a lot for other people, they'll be the people who actually end up with really bad sicknesses. People like, oh, they're such a good person. Why did they get the C word? Or, why did they get this? Because they're giving all their life force to everyone else and they're seeing themselves as less worthy. Yeah. And this is where I suppose the empowerment comes back in, because if we're viewing it someone else as they're more worthy than me, they deserve, I need to give them more stuff because, I'll be fine. Doesn't matter about me. And I think that's a lot of it in our generation we grew up in as well. It's like, oh, it's all right. I'll just do what they want to do. It doesn't matter about me. I'll just, I'll keep the peace and they'll just be in a mood with me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll go with the flow. Like, it doesn't matter that I actually wanted to do this. I'll just do that because that's okay. But again, what are we doing to ourselves? We're ignoring our needs, our desires, and then we become like that jar that just goes black because we've ignored ourselves.
Yeah.
And it
That's
is
a trauma response
crazy.
too, isn't it? Like the fawning, that's actually a trauma response for a lot of people. And I don't think people realize that is an actual trauma, that is called fawning. And I'm guilty of that. I'm guilty. I do more freeze and fawn than fight or flight. And when you start to understand it's not just fight or flight, there's fawning. So I grew up with a lot of narcissism around me as a child. And get this, Kerri, I want to hear, and Paul, I want to hear y'all's opinion on this. So there's this woman, Teal Swan. She's very controversial. I know she's very controversial here, but she does have some things where she says, but I'm like, that she did a speech once where she talked about how the empathetic child, so the person who's an empath, quote unquote, and I'm going to paraphrase how she said this, because when she said this, it was like, there it is. So when you grow up as a child, if your house is dysregulated, and a lot of people think their household growing up wasn't dysregulated because it seemed on the outside to be perfect, like mom and dad are here, we're financially comfortable, I've got all my toys. But if there's an adult in your house, so a caregiver, a mom or a dad, who is emotionally dysregulated. So they have narcissism or maybe bipolar disorder, or maybe they're dealing with an addiction like alcohol. There's just something going on that makes their emotions, they don't have governance over their emotions. Because you as a child are dependent upon your parents for your survival. Now, this is all in a very subconscious part of our brain. You learn as that child to scan for the dysregulation. And when you find that your parent is in that dysregulated place, you run to that parent to fawn that parent, to try to manage that parent's emotions so your survival stays intact. Now, this is all subconscious. A 3-year-old, a 4-year-old is not philosophically thinking this through. This is just what they're doing. Now, if you go through your whole life, your whole 18 years living with these parents, having to try to manage these emotions of these dysregulated adults for yourself, what happens when you become an adult? And my boyfriend and I are prime examples of this, because my boyfriend and I could be in a big room at a party and we could both spot a person who's dysregulated. His reaction is, ugh, and walk the other way. Like, I don't want to deal with that mess. My reaction is to go to that person and try to befriend them.
Yeah.
And try to take on that for them, because I never healed. I never even realized that has come from my childhood, where yes, my parents to the outside world were a good family, as we say in the South. It's a good family, meaning that they were financially secure, very respected in the community. But behind closed doors, there was a lot of dysregulation going on with the emotions, a lot of manipulation with emotions. And as a child, even though as a little kid, you don't know what manipulation is. You don't know, although my nieces and nephew are pretty good at manipulating their grandmother, I will say, so to get what they want, but in a very harmless way. But as a child, you're just trying to survive. You are already in that survival, even though from the outside world you've got enough food in your house, you've got toys, you've got everything you can need, but emotionally you're fragile because and I would like to hear y'all's opinions on that, because I thought that was so how that plays out, and another just very subconscious way that we don't even realize that that's what we're doing. It's coming back from the regulation of our childhood. When you're an adult now, you don't need that person at the party to help you survive, but that pattern is so ingrained in you that you run to it.
Yeah, absolutely. I grew up with a very narcissistic mum. She was a single mum ever since I was 4, and she was just, I had to tiptoe around her. I didn't know what mood she was going to be in when she came home. I didn't know if she was going to go psycho or not. She was very difficult to be around, and I was the worst. So I'm one of 4 kids, and I was the worst. I was the good child, the golden child, who did everything to make my mum happy. I would help clean the house. I would try and cook. I didn't really know how to cook, but I would make pancakes, or I would, make French toast or something, just so that there was something to come home to. And I was just shocking people pleaser. And then it's just so interesting that when so many of my friends over the years are like, oh, you're such a motherly friend. You're such a good friend. You're so mothering. And I'm just thinking, it took me such a long time to realize, well, I don't want to be your mother. Mm-hmm. I want to be your friend. And I'm still doing it. I'm doing it to my siblings. My older daughter, she's 15, said to me the other day, Mum, you've got to stop mothering your sister and your brother. It's like, you've got to stop doing that. And I'm just like, I don't even realize I'm doing it. It's just so ingrained. And then partners, you know, as well. I tend to attract these partners that I'm doing I'm more mothering them rather than it being a team relationship. So yeah, I'm just not going to go into another relationship until I've sorted that bit out. But yeah, Kerri, I'd love to hear what you think about it.
Yeah, and I feel that as well with the relationship. It's like you can almost marry your mother or your dad. It's going to be not fully, but there'll be some elements in there that will be a complete reflection of something that you didn't fully resolve as a child. And then we attract it back in as a partner. And oh my goodness, is that hard, hey? Because I feel like my ex-husband was like a copy of my mother, even down to the way that, you know, if we were to disagree or have an argument, he would ignore me. That's what my mum used to do. And it used to drive me mad. And then I'd be like, well, I'm sorry, I don't know what I've done, but I'll apologize, because it was, you know, it had the being ignored and the, you know, like I didn't like, so I'd be just like, did I do this? Did I say that? What have I done for him to ignore me this much? Was it that bad? And I remember even saying to him, like, what is it I've done? Oh, if you don't know what you've done, then that's even worse. And then I'm like, oh my God, what have I done? Like, you know what I mean? Like, that was how manipulative that was. But it was exactly what my mum was like. You should know what you've done. It's like, oh my goodness. But again, I attracted that again because it was unresolved. I didn't fully resolve with my mother. And then I just attracted in a partner, because the universe and my higher consciousness is like, for you to step into your power, you've got to see this.
Yeah.
You've got to see what you did and how you placed stuff out. And look, you're going to keep attracting it until you learn that lesson.
You go there. Yeah.
Yeah.
I say too, you know, for me, and I get it, but because I was definitely in super nasty relationship. I got my father, I don't have a relationship. And that's the thing too, I think down here in the South especially, and I have a feeling there's parts of Australia that are like this, in any Western world, where, you know, one of the 10 commandments is honor your father and your mother. And so that's your mother, that's your father. You need to respect them and keep, but it wasn't until I went through trauma therapy that I realized that with my father in particular, that was the problem. And that had caused me many years of being in very highly abusive relationships. I almost lost my life in one of them, where I got one night, same thing. It was just playing out this same, because I grew up with a father where I was constantly having to do things to get his love and to regulate him. And so growing up, when I started to date men, I dated the same type of, now my father's a veterinarian, he's very conservative, and I would date guys covered in tattoos who skateboarded and were in bands. So you would think it was different. It wasn't my dad, but it was the same personality. It was my dad in a different costume. And so, but it just got worse and worse and worse. And I thought that like arguing and all this stuff was like passion in a relationship. No, it was toxicity. And it wasn't until that last relationship where this happened, I won't say it on YouTube, one night, that I realized now I was well into my yoga practice and yoga studies at that time. So I did know that this was something wrong with me, that there was something in me, not wrong with me, but there was something that I needed to address within myself. And I actually at that point went into EMDR therapy, to trauma therapy, where I was actually diagnosed with complex post-traumatic stress disorder from my childhood. And that was playing itself out that way. And I will tell you, I mean, I went a few years without being in any relationship. My first trip to India, I was solo, no relationship. And I knew that I had healed myself, or healing had happened when I attracted my partner now. Because he's covered in tattoos and he skateboards, but he is literally nothing. He is the kindest man you will ever meet. He's gentle. He's soft-spoken. He is a very responsible, like I was in relationships where I was having to pay all the bills because they were he takes care of everything. You know, he leaves his, I trust it. So all of that, I had attracted that because I had worked on myself. Now that doesn't mean, now here's the catch I think sometimes is, I'm now aware that that's a weak part, that could potentially, there could be a relapse. I am aware, like you have to kind of be aware that there can always be a relapse. And so I'm constantly continuing to work on myself in that department. But I will say, Paula, like, I know because you said you don't want to, when you work on sometimes you don't even know, you're not even aware of how much healing you've done until something like that happens. And you're like, oh, I actually attracted. Because no nice guy had ever like texted me before that. No nice guy had asked me on a date before that. It was always the bad boy, you know, like it was guy, I mean, he's so sweet that he's covered in tattoos. And my oldest niece, when she was really little, my sister walked in one morning to change her and pulled her pajamas off, and she had taken magic marker and colored all over her arm. And she was like, Jacqueline, what have you done? She go, like Todd, like she had wanted to do like the tattoos like he had. And so, but that, cause he's good with that. He's so sweet that even kids, want to come sit in his lap. And like my niece would bring her doll babies when she was little, and he would sit there and like play with her, and my exes would have never done that. And so I will say, you do start to, you see these barometers of your own healing journey when things in your life start working out differently than the previous patterning.
Yeah.
And that's a good lead on there, because it's literally like, that's where the healing is worth it. People are like, well, why would I want to dig into the cupboards? Why do I want to open up all that, what kind of worms of stuff that happened to me? Because if you're willing to process it, then there's a massive reward on the other side, which is like an empowered version of you that then attracts a man or a woman, whoever, who is in alignment with you. That is, in alignment with you loving yourself. And I think that's what it all comes back to, because the more you bring back into, I look after me and I put myself first, then you can attract a partner that looks after you and puts you first, because you're putting yourself first. And
there's calm and peace in your life, which I thought before was like boring, like the meh relationships. And like, those are the peaceful relationships. Toxicity, arguing, that's not passion. That's toxicity.
But, right? But that's another programming problem, because we're shown in movies, and we're shown, even in a lot of the fairy tales and stuff like that. It's just, it's really so much of the programming. And so we just think, oh yeah, we're in love because we've got all this fire and stuff going on. Yeah. But then you start to do a bit of research, and I've read quite a lot of books about narcissism and all of that kind of stuff too, to heal from my mum. And it's just fascinating. It's like, wow, that's toxic. That's not passion.
Yeah. And having a partner that's also willing to work on themselves, like how much better it is when you're in a relationship with somebody who, like when I met my boyfriend, he had already, he's one of the master teachers here in the Southeast. He's 10 years older than me. But he had already been years of his own self-development, where he had done deep yoga studies. He had been with a narcissist. He had gone through deep trauma therapy. He had done many rounds of ayahuasca. Like he was before I'd even met him. So we independent of each other, we're doing all this work. And then even together, we support each other in continuing that work. Right. And continuing that self. That's so important. And and it is, Kerri too, I think too, and Paula, I say a lot of times when I have students that they come in, they want to go through the work and they want to start to heal themselves and change themselves. But I say, what I find is sometimes the devil is better than the devil you don't know. And those patternings are so ingrained that when they feel that change start to happen, they quickly resort back to the old, because at least it's familiar. Right? How do you help people get over that hump of trusting that the devil you don't know, the future, the change is actually worth being uncomfortable about the change because you don't know what the change is, if that makes sense? How do you guys work through clients in that way?
It all comes back to the self, because I feel like you're never going to be able to trust the change if you can't actually trust your own self. And this is where it comes back to your own intuition, your own self-belief, your own self-worth. Am I being kind to myself? Because if we can't, then we're always going to start to attach to the devil that we know, because it's familiar and we don't trust ourselves with the unfamiliar. And again, and that all comes back to, like, as the more we let go, the more we actually find ourselves. So it's one of them that doesn't quite make sense within words. It's like the more I let go of who I thought I was, the more I discover who I am, and then I can let go of things that aren't kind to me. Yeah, because I think a lot of like the devil is in a relationship that isn't kind to you, and then it's like, well, why am I feeling that something isn't kind to me is safe? And then, I suppose when we're talking through clients, it's kind of getting them in alignment with their own heart and their own self. And am I being kind to myself by being in this relationship
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of it is processed through that with different sessions. And again, it does take a lot of work because I've actually had a few clients go through this, and I must admit that it can take a number of sessions for them to get that epiphany of like, oh my God, I can't believe that I'm still like, I stayed with him so long. And it's like, but I now get it. Like, and now I get why I couldn't, but I feel so much stronger. And it's like, again, it's that self-empowerment, and it takes a while it's quite hard to even, I suppose, it's quite hard to talk about it like generally like this, I suppose. It's almost like a process that the person has to kind of develop within their own selves.
Mm-hmm.
And there's not one way for that person to kind of develop that self-security. But again, by processing, the more and more they process, the more and more they can be like, oh, I created this. How is that person then a lesson? How is my attachment to them some lesson that I've still not overcome? And then the lesson is almost complete once they can let go of someone that is harmful.
I hope you guys are enjoying this episode with Kerri and Paula just as much as I am. If this episode is intriguing to you and you want to learn more about how to heal yourself and how to get into your body and how to truly practice authentic spirituality, which is, as I've said many times, is getting to know your own spirit, getting to know your own life, dealing with your own shadow side, then Paula and I have a really, really fun and special new thing that we're working on. You see, for the last few months, you guys, Paula and I behind the scenes have been developing a virtual mystery school, a virtual yoga shala, and we are so excited to now be soft launching it. We're going to be soft launching it until February 20th. So that means the next couple of months, you're going to get tuition at a super, super discounted rate. And here's a little secret. If you purchase this service, this product within the soft launch period of these next couple of months before February 20th of 2025, you will be grandfathered in at this discounted rate. Your rates will never go up. Let me quickly show you guys the platform. So this is called the Esoteric Academy. And again, this is something that Paula and I have been working on. As many of you guys know, this is what I do for a living. This is what my education is in outside of YouTube. And so I'm so excited to be able to do something like this, to be able to work with you guys virtually all around the world. Now, for the first couple of months now here in the soft launch, the tuition is only $25 a month. Like that's basically a drop-in for one day, for one class at a yoga shala. And you get all of this for a month. So this membership includes all free membership contacts. So we do have tier 1, which is a lot of our YouTube videos that have been shadow banned, where we release it without commercials on tier 1. So you always have access to that. Access to our private community connected with like-minded people. We call that a satsang. So you'll have connection to all these people all around the world who are also students of the Esoteric Academy. You will have access to our library of content on how to heal your body, mind, and spirit. You will have access to Ashtanga Yoga, the Movement of Alchemy course, Paths to God course, which is over the Bhagavad Gita, quantum healing courses, exclusive exercise videos with me, exclusive meditations with Paula, and exclusive interviews with special guests. New content is added regularly. So as of this soft launch, this is what's available, and we are constantly going to be adding to this. Now, as we add courses to this tier and classes to this tier, none of the old classes are going away. So the library is just going to grow and grow and grow. And my thing, you guys, like if you've been on YouTube with me for a while, you know when I would do stuff, I would like drop one video a week, then drop one video the next week. What I'm doing with the Esoteric Academy is I'm actually going to complete the course before I post it. So this means that you get the opportunity to take this course at your own speed. And you can go back and re-listen to classes and retake classes. Let me show you, for example. So here's the Bhagavad Gita course. I have all the courses complete. Nothing else is going to be added to this. You get to go at this at your own pace. The Alchemy of Movement course is complete. Now for the exercise videos up here, which we have the exclusive exercise classes, walking, strength, and stretch. We have these classes available, and then fusion movement here. So 2 separate libraries for classes. Now, I will be constantly growing this library. In the upcoming months, I'm going to be adding between 2 to 4 new workouts a month for you guys. On top of that, starting in February, we're going to be doing one live call with you guys each month, a group call where you can talk to us, ask us questions. And we're also going to be trying to aim for 1 to 2 live exercise classes a month, so that I can actually, if you're signed up with this tier, we'll send you a Zoom link and I can actually watch you exercise and help you find the alignment. Right? So we're not just dumping all these classes and then saying, good luck, have fun. No, Paula and I are going to be readily available to help guide you through all of this. And with both of these exercise classes, as you guys know, or both of these exercise libraries, as you guys know, I've said this since the beginning on my channel, exercise is the foundation of spirituality. The root word of exorcism is exercise. If you're not exercising, you're not practicing spirituality. Why? Because the body is the conduit of energy in this life. It's the Shakti, the Shiva and the Shakti. The soul has created the body for the template of the karma that needs to be worked through in this life. And so dropping into your body is really foundational. It's where you begin in spirituality and it's where you end in spirituality. So what I have done, I've meticulously gone through my 19 years of education, all of my years spent in India, studying at school in India. I have taken all of this old, ancient, esoteric information regarding the body from traditional yoga, and I've taken those principles and I've worked them into more modern exercises. Now, again, we do have a course of traditional yoga, and we're going to be adding a beginner course into traditional yoga, but I do understand that traditional yoga is very potent and it's not accessible to a lot of people. So I have made this platform literally accessible to every person. We have many different levels of exercise. We have many different intensities, different minutes, and anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour. And this is where you guys come in with the soft launch as well, because I want to hear from you. Once you become a part of this academy, you become a student at this academy, you've disciplined into this academy. I want to know which classes work best for you so that I can better serve you. Do you as a whole like the walking classes, the fusion classes, 30-minute classes, hour-long classes? What works best for you so that I know how I can accommodate you in your growing journey. All right. I'm really excited myself to take some of Paula's ascension courses, what she's doing, her level 2 courses, the spirit course, everything. And again, we're going to be constantly adding to this. These last couple of months is the soft launch once again, so that we can help iron out any creases we need to and really get to know you to figure out what we can do to be serving you. Now, another course that is going to be constantly growing is the Academics of Spirituality. And this is a course that I have created with just kind of some random miscellaneous spiritual text and concepts that you might not totally be familiar with. Like, for example, I've got castor oil packs here, food, weight loss, and spirituality, the yamas and the niyamas. I'm working now on a new video over the gunas. So these are some like texts that are referenced in a lot of the courses we do. And if you might not know what that is, then you can come back to the Academics of Spirituality, click on the class, and so that you get familiar with some of these terms. I'm also about to make a class on parampara, just random spiritual terms, just to help you really have that autonomy, right? Like a teacher's job is to eventually not be needed. So my job is to give you, I've been very blessed to have incredible teachers in my life. And let me tell you guys, like $25 a month for all of this is unbelievable. I have spent thousands and thousands of dollars on my own education. An unlimited monthly tuition at a yoga shala is anywhere between $160 and $200 a month. So you're getting all of this for only $25 a month. This is so cheap. I mean, even the courses, like even this course alone in a regular studio would be like $800 value, right? But we really marked it down for you guys just to be able to make it accessible to you. Of course, we have to charge something because we have to pay for the platform. And of course, on the side of light, we do believe in energy exchange. We don't believe in enslavement, vampirism, or martyrdom, which when you constantly expect people to service you for free, that is the negative polarity, right? That is the polarity of enslavement, of vampirism, where you're sucking life force from somebody without them receiving any fulfillment back. And martyrdom is not of the light. And so we're trying to keep the prices as low as possible, though, to help you be able to afford it so that you can start bettering yourself. And yes, I'm so excited, guys. I cannot wait to hear what your thoughts are. I cannot wait to hear which exercise classes that you like the best, what you want me to focus on in the future, and to really get to know you guys. So if you want to take part in the Esoteric Academy, all those links are down in the description box below. Oh, and on top of that, when you register, you get 7 days free. You get a 7-day free trial just to make sure you like it. If you sign up, you do the 7 days free trial and you decide you don't like it, no problem. We can cancel your membership. No big deal. Your tuition won't be charged. So anyway, you guys, again, if you really like this conversation with Kerri and Paula, I hope that you take a moment to check out our website, our new platform, our new mystery school, the Esoteric Academy. I think you hit on an important thing too in the very beginning. You talked about staying with a guy because you want to stay in Australia. How common is that story? How many women stay in bad marriages because of the finances? Or how many mothers put that on their shoulders, going back to motherhood, where they're with a toxic man, but they don't want to break the family up for the kids? Or meanwhile, they don't even realize the kids are doing like scanning the room, trying to regulate dad, it's just, and I actually, like, I understand, like, for women who haven't worked in 20 years because they've been a mom, and all of a sudden, it's that those fears of the future, and like not being able to maintain the same lifestyle on their own than with their partner. And it's but a lot of times too, it's like, but your freedom tastes so much sweeter than that mansion your abusive partner has paid for you. I'd rather live in a car free and at peace than in a mansion in toxicity. But again, it goes back to break. And it is, I love it, because I think a lot of people get frustrated with themselves because it's almost like they know what the problem is, but addressing the problem is taking a while to actually work through it and come on the other side of it. But it does take time, and there is no time limit. There is no time limit on how long it takes to process something. And it's like you work, and we call it in Sanskrit prativa. And all of a sudden in this, like, it's a flash of illumination. You just have this like flash of illumination, this prativa moment, where all that work comes down to the singular moment where all of a sudden everything you knew, you now actually know. You actually like embody it in your psyche, and that's when everything shifts and changes. You timeline jump, I guess, if you will, in another way of like shifting your own reality. So it's hard work. This humaning business, it's not for the weak.
It is. And that's why I thought, even as like, as yourself, as a coach, as a healer, whatever we're doing, we're guiding the person back to themselves, back to self-awareness. So when they hit that epiphany, like, all we can do is guide them back to their own understanding of their own self. And the epiphany happens when they are ready for that.
Yeah, because it's
really quickly. Yeah, you get those miracle sessions where the person's like, oh, I just get it. And then sometimes it takes time before they fully go, oh my goodness, it's all back to me.
Yeah.
I get it.
You bring up another good point too, both you guys, and the work that you guys do and the work that I do. Have you guys ever heard of rolfing? It's like a form of massage therapy that's actually I laugh because it's kind of violent, but it's not supposed to be. It literally like gets into your fascia, and it's a form of therapy that releases so it can be it's not like a nice little massage with like Enya music playing. It's like literally they're working your body to work emotion out. Well,
is that like remedial massage?
It was created by a woman named Ida Rolf, so they call it rolfing, and it's intense. Like, it'll bruise you. I had some of it done in India once, and it was intense. It's really intense. But Ida Rolf, and this kind of brings in the role of like the healer or the teacher. So Ida Rolf was this woman who went to India. She went and studied all these different like ancient spiritual practices to try to figure out like how humans evolve. Like, how do we, we're these souled beings, these beings that are in this Shakti, in this body. The body's the template. We have to be in this body in order to know in this life. So when we have everything we're looking at scientifically is just these patternings. We have these patternings that we've learned. Most of them are not good for us, right? Most of them we need to shift the patterning. And Ida Rolf figured out that there are patterns that you can shift by yourself. But there are a lot of patterns you can't, because you don't even see them. And so that is when she said the external force, which in her method of healing is taking an elbow and digging it into somebody's quadricep to release anger, or having someone quantum heal, or for me, adjusting someone's hips, that external force that forces which the body is the mind field, so forces a break in the dam in the body, then trickles into the mind, but it takes multiple sessions, right? It's not, sometimes you can pop a hip and boom, it's done. the person cries and they're good, then a new pattern is a new pathway has been revealed. But sometimes it's daily. And that's where you guys come into play, where I come, because you become that external force in that person's blind spot that pops the dam down that they can't even see, where then the floodgates come rushing in to change the patterning.
So I'm such a big believer in, you really need to do your own self-healing, because that is so empowering. But it's also so good to have someone that you kind of see on a regular basis, because of that, exactly what you just said. There is so much when you're doing the work on yourself, it can be quite, it's hard work, but it's so rewarding. But there is so much that you can miss so easily and not see. Like, for example, I see a kinesiologist quite regularly, and some of the stuff that comes up in the balance, man, I would have no idea that was even going on. Even when I've had a session with you before, Kerri, a lot of stuff came up that I had no idea what was going on. And I think I cried quite a lot in that session, but it was really, really powerful. It was great. And also just interesting about the rothing. I've not heard of that before. I've had quite a bit of remedial massage, because remedial massage is not like a nice relaxing massage. It's quite, really works on your body, but it helps because so much emotion and trauma is held in our muscles. But a very much more gentle way to release that is actually through homeopathy as well, because, homeopathy is very powerful for that as well, and very, very gentle way of releasing things.
That brings me to a question I have for both of you too, because I know how we deal with it. When we talk about the ego, and the ego is the false sense of self, and the ego does have a part to play. Like, it's not just here to destroy your life. It actually has a very significant part to play in our journey as a human. But what I see, and I tell people all the time, like, the ego is tricky. It's very tricky. And when you are getting close to a breakthrough, sometimes that's when the ego, again, kind of tries to scoop you back a little bit. And I see it play itself out in so many crazy ways in my line of work. I see it with myself. Like, for 19 years now, I'll get on my mat. I say this all the time, guys, and I'm serious. This is what happens. And I'll start my practice. And then all of a sudden, at 4 o'clock in the damn morning, I need to go start the laundry. Like, I need to stop my practice and go start the laundry. So you see,
because laundry is so much fun
at 4 o'clock in the morning, like, right. Yeah. And I know what it is. I know it's my ego trying to pull me away from the work that I'm facing, because the work is scary. It's still scary 19 years later to have to face yourself. So in your line of work, do you guys see that with people? Are you able to spot, like, where people are trying to, like, dip and dodge, like, what they're having to face? Like, it goes like, oh, nope, I don't. Okay, yeah, I've got daddy issues, but nope, I'm gonna go change the laundry now. Do you guys see?
Oh yeah.
When I get somebody in front of me, sometimes I don't even, I'm like, would you want to work on any in particular? No. And then I literally just read them like it's like, I say it's almost like reading Braille. Like, it doesn't, like, on the outside, it just might not look like anything's there, but I can literally just read the person's body, read the person's aura. And then I can literally sometimes I don't have to say, actually, it's usually the people that don't want to say anything. And then like, okay, then I'll just read what's right in front of me. And that'll be like, you can see their face is like, oh my goodness, that's literally everything that's going on in me right now, but I didn't know how to put it in words. Yeah. So I feel like, and again, with as quantum healing, we're literally just reading the energy that's already there, but you just learn to interpret it into, translate it into words. And again, everyone has this in the auric field. This is why sometimes when you go into someone's aura and you're like, they're amazing, or they're this, or sometimes you're like, oh, actually, there's something about them I don't really like, because it's already written there. It's already a frequency that is inside of them. And that's actually, like, once you get really in tune, and I find that, like, with myself before sessions, I literally almost have to, how can I even put it? It's almost like my own consciousness kind of steps back a little bit for me to be able to fully read someone. It's like I have to get out of my own way, and then I have to, and then just fully read what's in front of me, and I treat it as if it's my own body then. So when I'm facilitating a session, I'm reading it as if it's myself. But again, in the greater schemes of things, we are all each other anyway. So when I see it as that, it's like, okay, this is a part of myself that can't see itself. Can I see this part of myself? Yes, I can. And that's when I read the person, I literally only sometimes have to say a few key words, and then I can actually feel the energy where it's trapped within their aura or their body. And then I start to, I suppose, alchemize, transmute that energy and collapse the field of that. Because again, when it's almost like it just creates pockets of energy that become trapped. And as we collapse those pockets of energy, you get, like muscles fully released, shoulders move, and you get sometimes people just start to I can breathe again because they might have some weight on their chest. So it's a process of just reading the energy of what is actually in front of you, and then processing that out with someone. And again, sometimes they can't fully process it, but sometimes I can hold on to a bit of energy, and I'm literally like, okay, I can't move this. So I'll literally say to someone, because I'll read the energy and I'll be like, okay, there's something that you're holding on to here. And I can feel a masculine energy. And then sometimes I have to say those words, and then zoom, the whole energy collapses. And whatever they've seen a memory in their head at that point, because I'll be holding on to the memory. And sometimes, like as a facilitator, you can see little glimpses of it. Sometimes you see the whole thing as if it's a movie. It's really clear. Sometimes it's just little glimpses, or it's just an energy. And again, it sometimes comes with what age did this happen and how was it stored from that understanding of that age. So if it's a really young child, sometimes it's like, you're holding the energy, it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
But because it's the young child's understanding, so I'm like trying to interpret, and then sometimes I just can't interpret it. So I'm literally like, okay, it feels like this. I can just feel some sadness. And then sometimes they'll just get a tear come down their eye, or they'll just start to cry. And they're like, I don't even know what that was. And it's like, you don't really need to. It was something that was
a process
so long ago that it was just stored within your body or your energy field, and now it's kind of been released. So it's
that's what I love about quantum healing so much. It's so amazing and so powerful. And I love that people could just come in and they don't even really have to talk about what's going on if they don't want to. So like when you're saying, Bryce, if that ego is getting in the way and they don't want to go there. I mean, I've definitely worked with a few clients that have not wanted to talk about things that are going on. You don't need to, because when we're going into that quantum field, we're just kind of tuning in, like Kerri said, you're just tuning into that person's aura, and then you just get a feel for what needs to be cleared. I also get a lot of colors that come in that want to go into certain areas, and they want to go clear a certain area and things like that. And it's just incredible, because I was never able to do this before. When I was little, I remember my brother and sister had experiences seeing ghosts. I never had until I was in my grandfather's house, and I was sleeping, and one night I heard a voice, like a really deep, dark voice, and I believe that was my grandfather talking to me. And I just said, no, not going there. So it's almost just like I just said no to the whole spirit world, because I'd just been so scared from what my brother and sister had told me. I was like, no, I'm not going there. I don't want to. So I kind of put like a shield up, because I didn't want to see anything or know anything. And so then it wasn't until I did Reiki 2, my Reiki level 1, I didn't really notice so much, but once I had Reiki level 2 attunement, I started to see those colors when I was working with people. And then once I did the courses with Kerri this year, it just kind of brought everything to just a whole nother level of working in the auric field and what comes up, and then learning about the entity removal as well was amazing, because I hadn't learned about that before I did the course with you, Kerri, and I didn't realize how much. Oh my gosh, I do it now, like just sometimes on my girls or on the house, and I'm like, geez, we just accumulate so many entities just during the day. I'm like, wow, how does that, but the more you clear
never
it,
alone, guys, you're never
alone.
And the thing to know as well is, like, the brighter you get, so the clearer you actually become, you become almost like a lighthouse. And there's a lot of spirits that actually, that are earthbound.
When they come in,
and then they start to come around. I've cleared a lot. I remember when there's hardly any really around me now, because I was like, why is there so many? And I kept expanding my clearing and expanding my clearing. And I only get a few here or there, and because it was so many. And again, it's like, if there's anyone in the area that might have just passed away, those spirits, they can come to you. And you become like, this is where a lot of spiritual people can become overwhelmed or saturated with that. And I had a lot of mediums, especially, who speak to spirit, but they can become quite sick a lot of them, get quite sick because they have all these spirits that are always around them, and they're people that are, well, they're not processed all their stuff, and that energy becomes dirty, and the longer they're in the spiritual kind of existence, it's kind of the more their field becomes distorted.
And so can I bring up here, that's where it really is important to exercise and have really good nutrition.
Yeah, because if your body around you,
you need to have a strong body. I never realized how important this was until just the last couple of years. And I'm like, wow, it's so important to have a healthy body, because there are a lot of incredible healers out there, but sometimes they might be a little bit overweight, or they're not so conscious about what they're eating or exercising or anything like that. And I have noticed like the impact it does have on people, because doing healing work is such important, amazing work to do, but it does take its toll. And if you're not taking care of you and taking care of your body,
that's what we've been talking a lot about, because that's, from my training, that's the basis of all old spiritual. I mean, the root word of exorcism is exercise, and your body is the conduit of your energy, of your, you have these, what we call, in these vayus or nadis, which are like pathways of energy in the body. These are energetic. So don't go to your doctor and be like, my vayu's broken, because they'll admit you to a psych ward. It's all, my third chakra is a little broken, doc. Can you fix it? This is all energetic, guys. But, that's why, and I will say it's interesting to kind of piggyback up what you're saying, Paula, and kind of, for me, a lot of my trauma with having paranormal experiences, a lot of that was actually relieved when I realized that's part of being O negative, that's part of my bloodline. Is O negatives very commonly have a lot of paranormal phenomena around them, just from our blood type, and our eyes are shaped different in the back of our head, so we take in light differently. And when I realized that, when I made that connection, I was like, oh, so this is just like a part of, it's just like when you're a white person, you might get sunburned more commonly than someone with darker skin, right? I was like, oh, so this is just kind of a part of like being O negative. Like this is like kind of like a part of, like blue eyes don't get snow blind. Like this is just a part of it. And that kind of helped me not be as afraid of it. But I will say I was working with a healer a few years ago. And when I started seriously like going back and forth to India and becoming very getting up at 2 o'clock in the morning, doing Brahma Muhurta, like really working in my practice, getting very strong in my practice. This healer was doing this work on me, and she goes, you realize that saved your life? Like all those years you were in India and you were really forcing yourself into your body to put your leg behind your head or catch your ankles, and doing these chanting classes and doing like that saved your life. Because you forced your soul to go so deeply within your body that there wasn't a whole lot kind of hanging out, disassociating, like you were. And I knew that my life at that time, obviously it was hectic because you're traveling back and forth to India, and I got really sick, and there was a lot of other stuff going on too. But as far as like the whole paranormal phenomenon, that was when it was the calmest. That's when it was like the literal calmest. And I always laughed and thought maybe like India is just not as haunted because they believe in reincarnation. So maybe like when people die, they're like, see ya. Like they don't hang around. Like in the Western world, we hang around. Like that's what I had attributed to. I never really realized that it was because I was really so in my body and so focused on, okay, my pelvic floor, if it's soft, then obviously that's a representation of the softness of the chakra. So if I pull in my bandha and I strengthen, I'm going to have a stronger Muladhara up to Manipur, and that's going to help me be more. I was so in my body that there was no other energy for anything outside of my body, if that makes sense. Yeah. And and so there's so many, so what you talk about, Paula, there's so many different facets of the exercise. Like it does also help you face your ego and your mind, the negotiations of your mind. It also clears out the vayus. And you're right, when you're healing people all day and you're using your hands or whatever you're using, you are a conduit of energy. And so you need to be taking care of yourself to make sure that you're not, becoming, that you're grounded in order to I call it my daily baptism, like to like detox that off of you as well, And so, it's, the body's amazing though. The body is absolutely phenomenal. Like what a gift we've been given, and how much your body can actually show you. If you know how to read it, it can show you. Like you're talking about when you're sick, like it literally, is showing you, if you've got a knee issue, knees are connected to the kidneys. This is fear of the future. So if it's left knee, it's the feminine energy. Right knee, it's the masculine. What does that mean? So if you have a right knee issue, are you afraid? Are you scared that you're not going to be able to pay your bills? Are you scared you're not? Like, we can figure this out, right?
Yeah.
And then
there's a book that I have, The Secret Language of the Body. Amazing. Like it literally is. It's like the body's talking to us all the time, but are we willing to listen to it? And again, I feel like everything is embodiment as well. It's like when I described at the beginning, like when I was really weak, it felt like a spirits were like stepping inside of me because I'd become so disattached and disassociated from my body that I was so weak that something could step in me. And this is kind of when we feel into like, even when I feel into things that go really wrong in our society, when we could even say like, people who murder other people and stuff like that, really horrible things. They become so disassociated with themselves that they're allowing like negative entities, because a lot of these, like the natural human spirit is so pure. To be able to be incarnated into these physical bodies, we have to be incredibly pure. But when we're totally disassociated and then saturated with disincarnate beings and spirits and thought forms, then that can create what we call like a distorted human being. And a lot of the times, are they even really there? And then a lot of the times, like, oh, something took over me. I wasn't in my right mind. Again, what's all this saying? Like, I wasn't me. Like, something else took over me, and I did something. Like, a lot of the times when they, even with like, it sounds bad, but even like serial killers or stuff like that, and they say to them,
yeah, I was thinking that. Yeah.
And then most of them, I can't remember it. And it's like, well, how can you not remember it? Were they that associated that they actually might not have even been their consciousness that did that act? And again, this is where it's incredibly dangerous as a human being to be disassociated from your own body, because you're allowing then yourself to be an open vehicle for something to take, the driving seat of your body. And it's, we have to be sovereign within our own selves, or there's a lot of mess in the world from people who are disassociated from themselves.
Yeah.
So
I love that you brought that up.
killers. A lot, so common. When you're talking, I was thinking about that. That's so common that they'll say, "I don't even remember." Like, and it's they're so disassociated, and that you're right. That's so you need, and that's one of the issues I have with some of there's some modern spirituality that bothers me, because it's so focused on like being up here that they don't pull people back down. And my friend Cindy says it best, who does a lot of what you guys do. Spirit is what you are always. You're always spirit. But right now you're being asked to be a human. So you need to drop down those lower three chakras. That's your humanity. Those are your those people always want to open their third eye or work on a hot side. I'm like, actually, what's interesting is down lower. If you want to open your third eye, in your perineum, go into Muladhara, go into Mulabandha. Let's go there. Because if Muladhara is off, if you're not down in that root chakra, this one's not going to really open to your benefit. There could be some issues, right? So we gotta go deep. We gotta drop. And isn't that kind of the story of all these different resurrection stories, from Tammuz to the Jesus story? Even though Jesus, that's a weird story, but is that it's literally a metaphor of like diving into the pits of hell only to rise back up again. So we all have to come down to these three chakras are the pits of hell, because it's the jealousy, the betrayal, it's all these things that we don't want to. That's in that red zone, that perineum, and so that's where it physically lives. That's also where the base of Kundalini is. Interestingly enough, is in that pelvic floor.
Yeah. And it is. You're right. Modern spirituality is so focused up here, and you're so right. Like, we need to go down there. We need to go into the shadows and accept all those dark parts of ourselves. Love them and accept them and bring them into wholeness, basically.
Pull them up with, and that's why in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, and for those, like, Krishna is like the jovial, like the plays the flute. He's like the happy incarnation of God. And the Bhagavad Gita, they're on the war field, they're on the battlefield, and Arjuna's like, he's a warrior. It's like, I don't want to do that. And Krishna's like playing his flute, like, tough shit. You're a warrior. You're a warrior. And then he says, but if you want to worship me, you also have to acknowledge Shiva the destroyer. You also have to acknowledge, you can't worship me, you can't be in alignment with my jovialness unless you also equally acknowledge the Nataraj, Shiva the destroyer. And that is so powerful, because it's like you have to acknowledge this shadow within yourself. You have to acknowledge where you'll never fully be with the light unless you can actually pull that all into the light back. And that's literally, you guys, like, this is what cracks me up about, well, this is kind of the yoga perspective. This is why we came here. We came here to do this. Like, we didn't come here to be accountants and watch Keeping Up with the Kardashians. We came here to, like, literally go through this and to, like, have that amnesia, go through this disassociation to find that alignment again. That's the whole point of life, is to do this work.
Yeah. It's like creation had to figure out what it was not.
Yep.
And then it had to figure out, well, this is what I'm not and this is what I am. But then in duality, we kind of get lost in that, and then we kind of we don't know what we truly are and what we truly aren't. And then that's kind of the play of life. And then until we really figure out, okay, this is my truth, because a lot of us are living a lie. I mean, even with some of the things that I I feel into on myself, I'm like, oh, why have I still got that belief of when my mum told me that? That's a lie. And again, we got to go and unpack the lies that we've, it's like two sides of the coin. And again, that's what duality is. That's what the game is. This is what life is about. It's like we have to unpack the false and the true. It's a fun game. Hey?
Well, we have been chatting for like nearly an hour and a half now. It's gone so quickly. But this has just been so awesome. I have really, really loved this. Thank you so much, Kerri, for coming on and joining us. I wouldn't even mind maybe possibly having a part 2 with you, Kerri, if you would be interested, because there are some specific things that you teach in your course that I would love to go deeper into. It just may not be appropriate to be discussed on YouTube, so we might have to do the part 2 on another platform. If you would be interested in having another chat with us about that, that would be really amazing, because Kerri does some incredible work with womb healing, and maybe even just going more into the entity removal and things like that you discuss. I just think would just be so fascinating, but definitely might be better to be discussed on the other platforms. So if you're interested, Kerri, that would be great to have a part 2 with you. Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Bryce and Kerri, for joining me on my channel today. And I've loved so much talking to both of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you
so much. Bye,
everybody.
Bye.